together. Just a reminder, this is being recorded, so if you miss a section, you can come back to it in the future and check it out. We are going to encourage you to go to the right-hand corner and pick the view button that best represents how you want to experience this session today. You could pick everybody's view, so you can have gallery view, or you can pick the speaker view. Also, when you look over at the rest of your screen, you should see a housing in Cook County slide. Please modify that to fit your screen the best it can. If you are on a tablet or a phone, you may have to swipe through to find that PowerPoint. You aren't going to see that just by the person talking. So you make sure you swipe through. If you are wanting to make your screen bigger, because it's like me, as I say often, I forget my glasses and I have a tendency to lean in, even on a good screen, to read all the things people have put on their PowerPoint. You'll see some lines that go up and down between the PowerPoint and the pictures of the people. You can grab that with your mouse and drag it either direction to make it bigger or smaller. As the session is going on today, I encourage you to put your questions into the chat. We will be reading those off as there's time appropriate, as well as we will have some time at the end that will ask you if you want to unmute and have some time for some community conversation if you'd like. But a reminder, if we have closed caption, you can activate at the bottom of the screen if that's helpful for you at all. And then again, put the questions in chat. Glad to have you today. Julie, it's yours.
Thank you, Kelsey. We're so grateful to partner with CCHE and Kelsey and her amazing abilities to make the magic happen. So thank you, Kelsey. And the fun part, of course, about partnering with CCHE is all of our Care Partners Lunch and Learns are all on the CCHE website eventually, right, Kelsey? So that's really great. If you missed something in the past that you're interested or you want to check out what some of those are, you can look on our website as well and kind of see what kinds of lunch and learns you've missed. They're really wonderful. There's been some really engaging, wonderful sessions. So I'm Julie Wilson. I'm the Executive Director at Care Partners of Cook County. And you are attending one of our, well, in the winter, it's Zoom and Learn. We have that January, February, March. And then starting in April, we will be back to offering in person at CCHE. It's always the fourth Wednesday of every month. And we are in April again, we'll be at CCHE and Zoom. So Zoom is always an option. But as you did today, you'd register on the CCHE website. So we're so grateful you're here. Because there's some different folks here, I'm just going to quickly say Care Partners. If you're not familiar with Care Partners, I encourage you to check out our website, carepartnersofcookcounty.org. But we provide vital support and services to help clients, older adults and their families. So senior rides, chores, care coordination, caregiver support, a lot of education and advocacy for older adults, and end-of-life care, companionship. A lot of what we do is done by volunteers. And I know there's some of our volunteers here. So thank you, thank you, thank you for the work you do. And then just a couple of things I want to point out. We don't have a lot of imminent upcoming events, but I will say on March 9th, you're going to want to mark your calendar. We're having, the Second Chance Art Sale is going to be on Saturday, March 9th at the Hub from 10 to 2. And that is, in the past, you might have heard of the second sale with the potters, but this is kind of beyond potters. There's some other artists getting involved. So all the proceeds of that go to Care Partners. So that'll be a lot of fun. That's coming up. And then you know, the next Lunch and Learn that we will have will be in March. That'll be the last Zoom only. And that one is going to be on elder fraud and scams. So that's going to be a really great one. It's something we wish we didn't have to hear and learn about, but super important to stay. If you've been to one in the past, come anyways. Things continue to change and evolve. So really encourage folks. And then in April, yay, we're talking about enjoying the great outdoors as we age. So that's going to be really fun. So just lots of things coming up. Be sure to check out our website if you want to learn some more about that. And then I just quickly want to say, you know, we've been working on the age-friendly initiative with Cook County Public Health, and that's been super fun. We've just been having a great time doing community sessions and the surveys and all that work is done. We will be presenting on that to the committee of the whole at the Cook County Board on the 19th of March, just the results and recommendations. So that's pretty exciting. And I want to also say that that was our last Lunch and Learn in January, kind of an update on that. So if you're interested, go check out that recorded Lunch and Learn, or Zoom and Learn, I guess. And so today we are one of the age-friendly livabilities one of the domains of livability is housing. So today we're super excited to be able to have Jason Hale, the executive director at HRA, to be with us and talk to us a little bit about the ever-evolving outlook for older adult housing. And of course, it intersects for all ages. We all are impacted by each other, so certainly across the board as well. But what's available now, what ideas might be under consideration for the future, how residents of our county can advocate, which is a great cue-in for where Jason finds himself today. So Jason Hale, we're super happy that you could be with us today. And thank you. I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Julie. Can you all still hear me okay? Okay, terrific. Yeah, thank you, Care Partners and CCHE period for allowing me to come talk to you this afternoon. As Julie just said, I'm actually at the Minnesota State Capitol today. And so if I look up or somebody come, I think I have this room for the hour here. That's what I was told. Some colleagues were very generous and said, hey, do you need a spot? And I said, yes, I don't care where it is. And so I'm in some building in the Capitol complex. I'm not sure which one. But I am really grateful to be here to advocate for housing for Cook County, for housing policy. And we have some great representatives representing our region who take note, and they really ask good questions, and we have their ears. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity and to be talking with you today. So as Julie kind of said, Care Partners asked me to come and talk about sort of the HRA, what it is. I've had the pleasure of meeting several of you that I see on the screen here. It's good to see your names and faces again. I'm going to, just for kind of a high-level overview, the game plan, if you will, is I'm going to talk a little bit about HRAs, what they are, why we have one in Cook County. Housing for seniors in Cook County, giving a sort of higher level overview of the housing situation, which I'm sure you all know is basically not great. So I don't need to convince you that there are housing challenges in Cook County. I don't think. I haven't had to do that yet. Talk a little bit about Cook County demographics, which I'm sure all of us are aware of, but I think it's actually really important to understand where we are and where projections are for the future and why that matters. And then finally, some things that we at the HRA are working on actively. The various projects we have underway that we're crossing our fingers very hard and our toes and our legs and everything to make sure that they go through this year and get the funding we've requested. So if you do have any questions, and I think Kelsey said this, if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat. I'm happy at the end. I'm going to try to cruise through some of this to leave time to make sure that you can ask the questions. And if I'm lucky, I'll have some answers for you. But I want to make sure we get to some of those. So that's the roadmap. And with that, I'm going to cruise right along. What is it? Why we need it in Cook County? I'll just own this out the gate. I'm breaking some of the rules. In management school, they tell you, don't put too much text on PowerPoints because you'll lose your audience. So I'm just owning that. I'm not going to read all of the text in any of these. I think that Care Partners can send this out afterward if people would like the materials. But I'm going to touch on some of these. So you'll have it. It's more for your future, light reading purposes if you want to dig in. I think it's really helpful, at least for me, and this is the conversation we have often at the Capitol here. Why is housing so important? If we back out from just a second from specific age-related or low-income related or whatever, region-related, the real big picture here is it's like as far as material assets or possessions go, it's the single biggest determinant of outcomes for a whole big array of things. Again, I don't have to convince you all, but everything from health to education to wealth building to job stability to like community, whether or not we have firefighters or hospital employees or teachers, like all of that touches housing, and it's the biggest impact. If you can't, I think there's a lot of preaching and choir going on here, and I don't mean to do that. But this is the reality we're contending with, that we just don't have the spaces we need to house the people we need to fill the jobs that we have. Not even outside of that, we don't have the appropriate types of housing for seniors in the community, or, suffice it to say, I don't think it's hard to see how the lack of appropriate and available housing has had dramatic impacts in Cook County and is having dramatic impacts across the state. So I'll leave it at that. I could probably spend a whole hour talking about the various ways it impacts our world, but I think you get it. You're a smart crowd, I can tell, because you're here to learn, which is fantastic. What is an HRA? Big picture, it started at the federal level and really got legs after World War II, in part because of the baby boom. So the government decided we should probably have some sort of assistance or provide some framework to think about how we do housing nationally. So a lot of people, when they think of federal housing, HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, is the thing that comes to mind. They're the very big player in the room with housing federally. I mean, that's where all housing policy filters through, and things like the low-income housing tax credit program that goes through HUD and then is disseminated to each state, and we get our chunk, and then Minnesota divvies it up through applications. That's the big gorilla of housing federally. But Cook County does not get a direct HUD allocation. Because of our population. And we didn't have an HRA until about 5 minutes ago. Actually, that's August of 2021. In relative terms, it's been pretty darn recent. I think we're still the newest HRA in the state. And if I say we, by the way, I'm just used to saying that. I am the executive director, but also the secretary, the administrator, the program manager, the royal we. I guess I have a multiple personality thing going on. But just for context, the HRA is pretty new. And so one of the big tasks for us has been establishing the organization, creating things like bylaws and policies and making sure we're adhering to statute, all of the things you have to do. It's like running a small business, but with a lot more statutory framework and red tape, if you will. It's a small business that's a publicly, run deal. So we started in April, it'll be 2 years for me in about 2 months, which is remarkable. That's crazy how fast that's gone. And I'm optimistic about where we're going. So this is our mission statement. If you would like to look at some of the things we're working on or other resources or articles, you can go to our website, cookcountyhra.org. I know I'm talking fast. I apologize. I'm just trying to make sure we get through everything. And it's recorded, so you could probably go and slow down and repeat the presentation if you want. I would love for you all to respond in the chat. This is actually good research. I'm using you all for a research opportunity. Sorry, not sorry. What is your biggest challenge regarding housing at Cook County personally? Is it the affordability? Is it the location? Is it the right product? Something with more accessible for seniors? Is it what is it? Are you thinking down the road? And I'll get to that question later. But if you could just type in there what you find to be your biggest challenge, not the one that exists, but personally what you think. And maybe you don't have a housing challenge, and that's fantastic. But maybe if you have kids or grandkids that want to move back and they just can't find it, feel free to use that too. That would be really helpful. So again, I'm going to keep going, but feel free to punch that in if you could. I appreciate it. Again, not anything you probably don't know, but I have found it useful to give real numbers and context to what we're talking about when we're talking about the housing quote unquote crisis. It's expensive. That's the big problem. You probably have heard that. If anybody's done anything on their house or try to buy a new house, of course, it's super expensive. The graph in the bottom left here is the Housing Affordability Index, and this is the National Association of Realtors puts this together. And the only thing I want to highlight here is it's obviously by region of the country, but it's a little counterintuitive. But the lower the line is the more affordable it is. I'm sorry. See, I even confused myself. The lower it is, the less affordable it is. So you can see on this graph in August, this was taken. It's going all the way down to historic low levels. So it's the least affordable the market's been since this, 1990 and before, actually. This is just when they have the data. So what does that mean? It means that the incomes compared to the cost of housing are significantly out of whack, if you will. They're not, the progression of cost of housing has not been kept up by the increase in wages. And I don't think that's a surprise, but anyway. For more local context, even the last 4 years, as you can read on the screen here, there's been a 48% increase in housing costs. So I want to point something out that's actually really, really important. So that's one already sort of whoa, at least for me moment, that's incredible. It makes me wish I had a bunch of extra money 5 years ago so I could have bought a bunch of properties and invested in housing. I didn't. And most people, there's no crystal ball. I don't think anybody could have seen that happen, especially in Cook County. So it's probably not a surprise to you. During COVID, Cook County, Lake County, North Shore became extra popular because people wanted to get away from people. And, you know, part of the reason we live there is because there aren't a lot of people. I speak for myself. I love the trees. So that really pushed a lot of folks who were close to or at retirement age, the COVID pandemic, to buying properties up the North Shore, either getting ready for retirement or maybe doing a transition into retirement, or having that second home when they do retire, they're available to actually move there, or maybe it's just a second home. So the other thing that I wanted to highlight about that 48% increase is it's not just the cost, it's also the interest rate has over doubled. So that is a significant problem, which we can not do anything locally about, of course. That's a national problem. I just was reading this morning, this is like the lowest inventory market in memory. Meaning there's not any, if you could go online right now and look, there's nothing. I looked yesterday, the day before, there was nothing in the 15-mile radius of Grand Marais for single family home. Okay, and I know this is Cook County, so I have to be specific. A single family home that has running water and electricity that is available for under $500,000. So that's a problem, right? Okay. Problem established, got it. Like I said, though, it's really an incomes versus cost issue. And this is just for a snapshot of like what we're really talking about. I'll skip to the punchline of these. The home cost to income, so how much the home costs to what the incomes, the progression, it was 2.9%, or 2.9, excuse me, the ratio of cost to income. So in other words, the house, the median sale price in 1965 was just about 3 times higher than the income. And that's been, you may have heard this as sort of a general rule to follow, like a good way of understanding what's like how much house, quote unquote, you can afford is 3 times your household income is a good metric. And obviously that changes if you're making a significant amount of money. Like there are different nuances to that, of course. That's a general rule. Today, as of the end of 2023, it was 5.4. So the median house cost was almost 5.5 times higher than income. So just another way of expressing how disparate the cost and the incomes have become. Last thing, just to really drive it home, I've shown this map a few places, and people seem to find it useful and interesting. There's a whole field of green in the Midwest, which makes sense. You know, it's historically been more affordable markets because in real estate we call the smile states, which is basically the coasts. Those are the smile states. Those for weather reasons and for access to big cities, et cetera, amenities, those have been historically the most expensive. And unsurprisingly, because the weather is pretty awesome in California, if you're into that sort of perfect weather thing every day, it's also very expensive. That's boring to me. But you can see Cook County is the only red in all of Minnesota. So all that means, and what I'm trying to say is, as you relate income to cost of housing, we have it the worst, if you will. And that's, a lot of people don't actually recognize that. It's sort of counterintuitive. You would think it would be, I don't know, Minneapolis or something, but it's not about, that's just taking into account housing costs, but you have to relate it to the local income. That's really important. Okay, there's a housing study that the EDA commissioned before the HRA was really up and running. You may have seen it, it's on our website. Happy to send it out too, but the gist of it is that it projects that we need between 500 and 600, call it, units by the end of 2026. I'm going to put a giant asterisk on this. This is countywide, and this is a projection. Projections are based on the data that we have available. No one really knows what the ceiling is for the housing demand, and we don't really know how fast that ceiling will get hit. So to be clear, we have and I'll be covering it in a little bit here. The HRA is working on various projects, and in part because development is a numbers game, and nothing's done till it's done. So you have to try to get as many things going as you can because life happens and costs go up, and it's projects don't happen or fail or whatever. The point is, there's some concern in the community, like, well, how many do we need? Is this too many apartments? My response is, we don't know, but having more inventory and lowering costs for folks is not a bad thing in my book. And we are trying to catch up here, frankly. As a percentage of the total housing stock, 600 units is pretty big. And from what I understand, Cook County's had a housing problem for 40 plus years. So it's something that we haven't been keeping up with, so to speak. Now, maybe more relevant to you folks, as you can see here, this is a snapshot from the study. The most in demand or projected in demand housing type is assisted living and memory care. I'm sure you're well familiar. There is a dearth of that in Cook County, and I'll cover that in just a minute. And part of the reason is it's so darn hard to build. It's expensive, and I'll get into that in a minute as well. But I want to give you sort of a high-level snapshot of this is the projected need, so that we have an idea of what we're trying to. I'm not afraid of surpassing the 500 unit mark. That would be a great problem to have. I would love to have that problem. I'm not really afraid of that. I'm actually, and others on the meeting here who've heard me say this before, I'm tremendously grateful that we have interest in people coming to build in Cook County, period. Some of our peer cities across the North region can't even get people interested to come. They're really struggling to get developers to come and do anything. So I'm very grateful that we at least are able to get people that want to come and invest and build in Cook County. Okay, sales pitch over. Second question for you. How many of you are planning to move to a different housing situation, to transition from wherever you are now to something different, presuming you're going to stay in Cook County, in one of these brackets within the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, or you're not, or you're like, you're at your last address, gosh darn it, you're not moving, which that's totally fine too. But if you wouldn't mind throwing that in the chat, that really helps me give an idea of the time horizon we're talking about. I appreciate that. Just going to give another few seconds for people to respond. And I'm going to proceed. Again, I know I'm throwing a lot at you. Thank you. Housing's a big topic, and I could talk about it all day. Actually, I am talking about it all day. That's why I'm here. Okay. Housing for seniors in Cook County. There are some existing housing projects, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, or at least some of them. The market rate housing, which is basically not restricted. It's age, by the way, age is the only allowable discrimination in housing. And there are restrictions, of course, around that guide that. But 55 plus is the Homestead Senior Co-op, and there's a snapshot of it down there. Interestingly, as of right now, that cannot be built again today in Cook County, or in Grand Marais rather, because the city zoning code doesn't allow, we're not wanting to get too deep in the weeds, they don't allow condominiumizing properties. So I'm going to be working, and I don't think that's intentional. It just was a byproduct of some of the zoning changes. So I'm working with them on reviewing that, because from what I've heard, this would be a desirable, another one of these would be great for the community. A senior-friendly, owner-occupied product that people can maybe sell their existing house that might be a little bit much, or outside of town, and they want something a little more contained and lower maintenance. So I'm definitely interested in helping to get one of those, another version of this in town. And just to be clear, the reality is multifamily or projects with greater density, the best and most likely place for those is within the city limits, simply because of utility infrastructure. It isn't that we don't want to spread the love around the county. I'm working on projects outside of city limits, of course, but it's just more expensive and it's harder to do in zoning, and there's a whole layer of things. Okay, so the affordable rentals, which are all 62 plus, Grand Marais Apartments, Sawtooth Ridges, of course, and then Harborview. And I'll talk about Harborview in just a minute here as well. But that's what exists today, and I could be missing something, but that's what I believe that encapsulates the senior-specific housing projects. And the affordable units are those that are subsidized either by rural development or HUD with Section 8 vouchers. There's a subsidization to create the property, and it's rent restricted. Okay, I'm gonna try to go next year. Housing with services. North Shore Living, you might be familiar, is connected to the hospital, has 37 beds, it's a nursing home facility. Aside from that, there is no other assisted living or memory care facility in Cook County. The closest one is Silver Bay, which is a bit of a hike, I can tell you. So there are various surveys that address this, but according to Glenworth Cost of Care Survey is a pretty consistent one, and a care center would know, or care partners would know more about this than I do, but this is one that I found that seemed pretty reasonable. Well, actually unreasonable, but seemed pretty accurate. This is the relative cost of these various types of housing. So you can see, on a monthly basis in Minnesota, if it's almost $6,000 for memory care, that's the challenge when you're talking about senior-specific housing with some level of services. It's not just the construction of those units, and keep in mind, those units have to be single-level living, all ADA compliant. There are some extra things that go into the construction of that to be obviously considerate of the population that wants to live there. You're also talking about trying to get healthcare services provided in the same facility, which we also have a struggle with recruitment for healthcare providers. So we're kind of getting a double whammy, so to speak, on more intensive and assisted living type facilities. Doesn't mean we shouldn't and won't continue to try to get those, but I'm sure many of you, I'm talking to a better informed audience than I am about this particular industry. But what I do know is this is a significant problem across the state, and there are a lot of folks who are trying to embrace age in place philosophy, which is to help people continue to live in their homes if they would like to, and provide care and services in the home rather than having folks move into a specific facility. So there's a lot of talk even at the state level, and it's definitely at the national level, as our population continues to age. How do we do this well? And I could go on a diatribe about flexible housing and so on, but suffice it to say, it's expensive to live in and it's expensive to build, and it's difficult to get the services even if you build it. That's another consistently at the expense of a quick soapbox. One of the big challenges with housing, period, and this is from market rate to low income to senior care, whatever it is, getting the money to build it's the first problem. Then you have to deal with it once it's built. So what I mean by that is finding property managers, and in this case, finding service providers, whether it's assisted living, nursing care, whatever the need is. So it's not just actually building the facility, it's how do you run and operate it in a community like Cook County, which there are not a lot of places to pull from. There aren't a bunch of other property management companies, or like we have one hospital until you get to, until you get to Harvest, right? So we have to recruit those nurses and those PCAs and service providers, but they can't live anywhere. It's a big cycle of challenge. Okay. Demographic situation. I'm going to try to speed up here. It's just all this is so important, I think. So I dug into the data at the state level. The state demographer has projections, of course, for the future of every region. The Arrowhead region, which is basically the best part of the state. I'm sorry, I meant the northeast part of the state. Sorry, editorializing. We are projected to lose the most people by, I believe this is by 2035, about 19,000 people. That's the projection that we'll lose. Most of those, by the way, are in the St. Louis County. Well, that's the biggest population in that region, but most of the loss is coming from St. Louis County. If you look at Cook County specifically, we're projected to have our peak population in about 10 years, just shy of 6,000 people. Booming metropolis that is Cook County. Then we're going to decline steadily, and by 2075, none of us will be around, but there will be a projected 900 fewer people than there are today. The reason I mention this, before I get to that, the last bullet here is also important. 2030, which is not far from now, a third of the county is going to be over the age of 65. Why does that matter? Well, that's a significant portion of the population who historically require greater levels of service, historically aren't in the workforce, at least not as much. And so there's a little bit of a mismatch. And I'll show a demographic pyramid rather. So this isn't, I would say in 2030, the 33%, that's not terribly different from what we've experienced in the last few years. It's just showing that that's projected to continue. And frankly, again, you can talk to realtors and you can talk to folks, title companies. A lot of the buying activity that's happened are from folks in the cohort, the baby boomer cohort, who may be buying their second and future retirement home, which means in 10 years, they're going to be a part of that group as well. So that's the trend, and I understand why, because it's a beautiful place to live. So my intent in talking about demographics isn't to point to anybody as the bad guy or bad gal or bad group of population. It's to point out the reality of what we're talking about on a countywide basis and why it matters. Again, the reason that population decline matters is because If it declines and we don't have workforce, then all of the services decline with it. So that's typically, obviously, the decline of population is a negative health sign for a community or a county. It's kind of, it's not really a contested issue. If you're losing people, it's not healthy for the local economy. It's not healthy for housing. It's a whole bunch of problems come from that. Okay. I promise this is not all doom and gloom, by the way. I'm just trying to provide a sort of a stark real world snapshot and then what we're trying to do to help fix it. So real quick, youthful population, this is like, think of like developing nations, like this is what Nigeria's demographic pyramid looks like, for example. Way more kids because developing nations are more agricultural in nature. They don't have the infrastructure. When you industrialize and you get more and more developed, you have fewer and fewer children. That's just historically what's happened. Europe's in very much the same space. Japan's been in this space of aging population for 25 years. So America generally is in that middle category right now, on average, the aging population, or we're somewhere between, and then aged. And obviously you can infer here, the point is the smaller categories get smaller and the higher level, the older categories get bigger. That's all, like the bracket of people are aging without reproducing that younger cohort. And the birth rate in the United States is, right now anyway, in Minnesota is under 2, the replacement rate rather. So our population will peak and then projected to decline. This is Cook County's demographic pyramid. Not a surprise for most folks probably, but clearly it's basically an upside down, quote unquote, youthful pyramid. And this has a tremendous impact on school systems, on healthcare. It's not a surprise to you. A lot of the tourist organizations and outfits in the county rely on visa employees because we just don't have locally the number of work-aged folks who can fill those jobs. And even if people, and there are a number of people who would love to move to Cook County and would happily take some of those jobs, they just don't have anywhere to live to be able to afford a place on the wage that they would have to get at that job. So again, just for context, this is what we're talking about, and this is the projected continuation of this trend. I've already talked a lot about this. I guess I will say one real world example of this is the North Shore Living. I talked to the hospital 2 weeks ago, maybe. There are 9 empty beds, and there are over 9 people on a waiting list to be in that facility. And the beds are not empty because there isn't a demand. The beds are empty because there's no staff. So this is like I said, this is a sort of catch-22 or cyclical problem. Even if we have the facilities, like I said, if we don't have the staff to staff it, it's kind of a moot point. So in my mind, it's a tragedy that we actually have this available and that we can't take advantage of this because we don't have the people to help the tenants live there. And if we could magically tomorrow put an assisted living facility, another one in Grand Marais, we'd have the same problem. How would we staff it? So we have to be able to provide the housing for the workers who would be coming here to help run these facilities. Like it's not an either or, it has to be a both and situation. Okay. Gosh, I just feel like a cloud today, just a storm cloud. We need more housing, obviously. The graph on the left here, this is the Association of Associated Builders and Contractors, the national organization. The only thing I want to highlight there is that it projects that by the end of 2023, we had about 500,000 people short in the skilled trades. This is a national level, of course. We're no exception. I'd say per capita, actually, we have it worse than a lot of places because of our geography and where we're located. But we also, and you can read on the right there, my right, I don't know if it's your right, the American Hospital Association, we're about 1.1 million people short in healthcare. So again, I just sound like a broken record, but it's so important. We have a problem building the housing we need. And that's predominantly what I'm focused on these days, is trying to build more units to get people to come here, work, and fill the jobs we have so people can stay. Like it's all connected. There's a huge through line. So we need more of those skilled workers to build it so that the nurses and PCAs and physicians can come and live here to take care of our population. You can't have one without the other. And Cook County, we have the significant benefit I've said this maybe ad nauseum in public, but the reason I gladly and gratefully took this role is because people want to be in Cook County. That is something that not every rural community has at all. I can tell you, talking with my colleagues here, even and across the state, we have a housing price problem. We're the most expensive or least affordable in the state because people want to be here. People are buying the housing. You can look at places like the Iron Range or Southwest Minnesota. You can get what we would probably consider a darn good deal for a house that would not happen in Cook County. But it's because we're such a desirable place and we have such limited inventory that it's just pushing that pricing up. So it's a good problem to have in some sense that we have some more people would want to move and be and take these jobs. And you could talk to the hospital or the clinic, they'll tell you, we make offers, people come and they can't find housing and they have to leave. That's just become sort of an unfortunate, like normal story now, and not just in the healthcare industry. Okay. Summary, in case that wasn't enough, I'm just going to repeat it one last time here for you, and we'll go through all this. It's really expensive to build and operate housing, especially when you're talking about any sort of care, senior care, and frankly, even low-income housing. That's the challenge we've had at Birchwood. There aren't enough people to build it or to work in healthcare. High labor cost and not enough capacity for human resources, obviously, which is also tied to housing. This will only get more difficult as existing residents continue to age. What I've heard in my sense is more people would love to be in Cook County and more people would love to retire in Cook County. My folks are in southern Minnesota and they just didn't get it. They're like, I don't understand, because they're retiring and they're like, why would people? Isn't like it's the Arctic? Everybody thinks that the North Shore is like, I don't know, the Antarctica, and I'm like, you keep thinking that, we love it up here. And then I pulled up a snapshot of Minneapolis's winter weather in Grand Marais, and they're remarkably similar. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but because of the lake effect, of course we know, but it keeps it more temperate. And I shared that with my mom, and she said, what? Like she didn't believe it. She had to go look at it. And I said, don't look at the shoulder months. Like ignore April and October, November, because those are way different than a lot of the state. But unless we build more for everybody, this is going to be a continuous problem. It's going to get worse. Okay, quickly, HRA is working on a lot of things. Again, because development's a numbers and odds game, and I think I verge on realist and pessimist. I'm just hope for the best and expect the worst, maybe you could say. So I want to make sure that we have more irons and fires to sort of play the odds here. These are projects that are actively underway. You probably have heard of some of these. Switchback Village is supposed to start in end of April, early May. The benefit of having a non-winter, except for today, by the way, holy cow, I don't know what is up there, but like winter showed up today in St. Paul. We have a little bit of an advantage this year because people can get projects started faster because it's going to thaw faster. There's no snow on the ground. So that's actually really helpful. This is a 51 unit deal, and it is just up the hill from the courthouse and the hospital. So it's, 2 blocks from the 2 biggest employers in Grand Marais. Again, hopefully starting that, that's supposed to start this spring, whatever spring means in Cook County. Mud season. Let's see the next one here. Temperance Trails. This is a 20 unit single family project that we're working on. It says 22 to 24. Again, I'm just being conservative. It really comes down to demand. But you can see actually on here, one of the things that we worked on is you can see on the sort of the curve of the cul-de-sac, if you will, there are those side-by-side houses. And in part that's because I project, and the developer also believes that there's a market for single level living twin home with an attached garage. So again, it's another form of that home ownership model with slightly lower maintenance, but it's a great transition space for a lot of folks, or if folks want to quote age in place, they can still access this. The road will be plowed and maintained, and they have an accessible household. So that's the thought behind that. This is also we submitted an application to IRRR, 3 applications last week. It's been a busy month for funding at IRRR. And if that goes through, we'll hear in about 4 weeks from now. Then this is also supposed to start this spring. These are also projects that are pre-development, which means we don't have signed agreements, but some of them are pretty far along. This is a great example. Like I said, mud season 2024 is when this is supposed to start. We have an application for this to IRRR as well. And if you've read or heard the paper or the radio, variance was approved to allow for essentially underground parking, which is something we believe is a really great asset for folks who want to live in an apartment, don't want to deal with the maintenance. But you can pull your car in there, have a dedicated spot, and get your groceries up the elevator. We think that I mean, that doesn't, there's only one other I think Grand Marais condominiums has some underground parking, but this is the only apartment that will have it in Cook County. And we're hopeful we can still make the numbers work, but the city has been very supportive. We're very grateful. And the county also approved tax abatement for this project to help make it happen. So I just have to commend our local leaders. They saw the value and see the value in providing assistance for these projects. Frankly, it's a non-starter without it. They just wouldn't happen. There's a reason these haven't happened in the last 30 years or something. Without assistance, you just can't do it. So that I feel really good about. This is another project that was just, the city also approved providing the property for $1 to the HRA for this project. We are working on getting $1 million from the state. This spring, we're submitting an application for 16 units. There might be a second phase. It depends on what the city decides to do with the remaining property. But this is another example of state funds that are available one time that the HRA is really trying to make sure we get our, I don't know if I'd say fair share, as much as we can, because you know, once it's done, it's done. And again, I know there's a lot of multifamily potentially, but we don't know until it's done and people move in. So we're really just erring on the side of let's build more than we think we need than not build enough. This is a single family project in town. This is on a property that has been called Birch Mountain by some locals, which is why they call it Björkberg. I guess in Swedish that means Birch Mountain. It's 20 townhomes right now, also submitted funding for infrastructure help for this. Excited to, at least 5 of these units are going to be preserved for income qualifying families. So there are a couple different avenues that the HRA is working with the developer on how to make that happen. There's some state funding to do that. But really our desire is to have this, you know, we need more housing, period. And there aren't a lot of townhome options. And this will be a little pocket community in itself with some very well-designed homes that will also have, there'll be 2-story homes with a space dedicated for an elevator, a personal elevator. People want to have them installed so that people could live there longer and not have to contend with the stairs. So we're trying to think about ways to incorporate long-term living in some of these places, whether it's single level or, like I said, elevator in this case. I like the elevator option because these will have some cool views. So that's just my personal preference. Cedar Grove lots, the EDA has provided these to the HRA for some housing, and I'm working with the developer on the southern parcel at the moment. Too early to give too much away on that. We're working closely with the city to try to figure out utilities and access and wetlands and all of the fun things. And other things that are not housing project specific, there's an energy envelope and energy improvement program as a pilot that we created in these 4 entities at the bottom are partnering. CCLAP, Cook County Public Health, and the City of Grand Marais have partnered with the HRA. The HRA is leading this. This is going to launch, I think, we're meeting tomorrow, I believe, to discuss and formalize the launch date, which should be the first week of March, I believe is what we're going to land. We had a $50,000 grant that the HRA wrote and received. I won't go down too far down this diatribe, but the board agreed at our last board meeting, the HRA board, we're going to turn that money back. And the reason is because the requirements from HUD for those funds are so onerous, if you will, that single person shops just can't do it. And there's also clawback. There's a whole litany of requirements that just make this money, unfortunately, not practical. If it was for $500,000, it's a totally different conversation. But one of the goals of this partnership with these entities is to get this money out in the community to income eligible households to improve their quality of life and those buildings as quickly as possible. with a $50,000 pot of money, it would probably extend by a year the ability to do that with that money at least. So yeah, so we haven't formally decided, but that's what we're leading. Harborview Apartments. Obviously, I'm sure everybody's aware of the concern around the affordability expiring for this building. It's 31 units in our core of Grand Marais. I am working actually pretty closely with a new owner, negotiating with them to try to keep as many units accepting Section 8 for as long as possible. So right now, that building is 100% occupied with Section 8 tenants, and it's age restricted, and also folks with disabilities can live in Harborview as well. The new owner is legally required to do nothing. They bought it. HUD has approved the sale. They're not planning to renew the contract. So in theory, July 1st of 2025 could roll around and they can make the whole thing market rate. And of course, while we need market rate housing too, we do not want to lose or give up this senior and lower income housing opportunity. So I've actually been working with one of our state legislators on getting some funds to help keep this affordable, at least some of it. So more to come on that. I can't say too much yet because lots of irons and fires, like I said. Last thing I think here is Birchwood Apartments. You may have heard or read about this in the news, especially last year. It was quite a concern after last winter, which was more of a winter. In December, we had that crazy storm. I don't remember, it was around Christmas. Blew some roofs off and also caused some damage to this property, which is really what, caused a kind of cascading effects of like, oh, wow, this is in serious disrepair. It really brought to the surface some serious issues. So the good news is the HRA partnered with the current owner and with USDA and MHFA and GMHF and all of the acronyms to try to figure out what we could do about this. And we brought One Roof Community Housing to the table, and they decided to take it on. And this project was awarded in December, $10.5 million total development package to rehab and save all 24 units. So that's going to start. I should just talk to them before this meeting. They're dialing in the phase 1 rehab right now, getting ready to talk to the city about building permits and figure out what they need to do. So really excited for that to start in the spring and save those really important units in the community. Oh, one last one, working with Hamilton Habitat, because if you have somebody like Hamilton Habitat who is willing to build more affordable housing because they want to, why would you not want them to do that? And so we're trying to support them. This is just one example. I'm working with Anna Hamilton as well. I'm trying to help find some other property in the future that we can provide so they can keep doing their mission. Like the HRA, they're not competition. They're our allies. Like we're not trying to compete. There's plenty of need to go around. I'm not coveting any of that. So I want to help them be successful. Maybe it's 1 or 2 houses a year. Those are 1 or 2 houses that last for 50 years at least, right? So you have to have the long view of this. This is infrastructure we're helping them build in our community for families. So this is just one example. This is property they own right next to the Homestead Co-op, and we're providing a little bit of gap insurance in case their project goes above the expected costs. The HRA's contributed to that little cushion because they just don't want to lose money. That's a pretty noble goal. They don't need to make a bunch of money. They just don't want to lose it. So we're trying to help them do that as well. Okay, last thing, I believe, senior housing opportunities. So there's a lot of, we talked about the specific sort of different products available in the memory care, assisted living, et cetera. This is a kind of big picture where seniors in the community might have some options. Some of these are obviously self-explanatory, intuitive, but I'm going to say them anyway. We're trying to build multifamily apartments. Some of those units will be rent restricted to really help workers earning less than the median amount in the community. That is a win for us because, like I said, we need those people to come and take these jobs. But then there's also going to be, the rest of the units. And if you're income qualified, that's great too. But if all of the projects, the 3 multifamily in Grand Marais, would be 103 units of housing total. And what has happened a lot, which kind of defied what people expected, when I was working in Duluth, I, for a very short stint, lived in a market rate my wife and I have sold and flipped houses. Between houses, we lived in an apartment for 6 months. And we were blown away at how many retirees and seniors lived in that facility. It had families and college students and retirees who really loved not having the maintenance and selling their house and just figuring out where they wanted to be for the next 5, 10, whatever years. So that's a tremendous opportunity. If you want to sell your home and open it up for another family who's trying to move here, that this is a sort of win-win in my mind, if we can provide alternatives for folks. And I've already actually had a few phone calls from folks, retired folks who are like, hey, I'm trying to sell my house to my kids, but I don't have anywhere to live. When are those apartments going to be done? I'm like, not soon enough, but hopefully we'll hear an announcement. So that's one really big opportunity kind of in plain sight. Accessory dwelling units, I hear a lot of questions about. That could be a whole other presentation, but I'll simply say what it is building a secondary dwelling on your existing lot where there's already a primary home. And the Grand Marais zoning allows for that in a lot of instances. It was changed a few years ago to be much more friendly for density. The big issue with ADUs, the big challenge, is that if you have a mortgage on your existing home, banks don't want another mortgage going to build another unit of housing on your property because your mortgage is on a certain legal description. So if you own your home outright, you could take out a mortgage against the equity of your property to build another unit. That's a great opportunity. Landlords can take advantage of this if they want to increase density. They'll have 2 properties in a smaller footprint. It's less to manage. It's easier to, for a lot of reasons, it makes sense. It's efficient. Most of the people who end up doing ADUs are landlords or folks who own their homes and have the means to build an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit. But it also can be a great opportunity for housing in-home care. I've seen this done in other communities where you could build an ADU, another tiny, and it could be like 500 square feet. But think of like a studio apartment on your property. And then someone who provides care for that homeowner can live in that space at a discounted rate or for free or whatever the arrangement is. And then they can still have their own space. So that's one creative. I've also seen multi-generational, where families will build one in their backyard if they have a nice yard, especially, and then they can sell their house to their kids, and then grandma or grandpa or whatever can move into this smaller unit. Usually it's a great opportunity for single folks who want to have family close by, but also want their own kitchen because they don't want their kids messing it up. So that's another option. The last thing here is, like I already said, the single level living and the townhomes with elevators. Those are things we're working on to try to accommodate a wider age range of folks who might be interested in owning something. That was a lot. Thank you for your patience. Do you have any questions?
One of the questions in here was, where is Birch Mountain? I tried to explain it, but I don't know that I was accurate. I said, it's Upper Birch above 3rd Street, I think between 8th Ave and 5th Ave. Does that seem accurate?
It's north side of 3rd Street between 7th and 8th, actually. Yep.
Feel free to put your questions in the chat or unmute if you'd like to ask something.
Yeah, sorry, I'm pulling up the chat here. Okay, lots of.
Well, people think on things. I saw the other day somebody posted on Facebook about a rental at the One Roof Housing that is in Lutzen, and that the requirement of being in that rental was that they had to be employed or get employed. Is that accurate? And could you speak to that for a second?
What I can say is that was the spirit of the arrangement, because that was a partnership with, it was One Roof, and I believe they also had a workforce housing development grant for that project. Again, I wasn't a part of that project, so I can't speak to the impetus for all of that. My understanding is you cannot legally require someone to have to work in a certain community. And in fact, there's a bill that's going before the House and Senate here that makes it very clear that you can't discriminate about someone's income source. Because one of the challenges, of course, is if somebody has a voucher, a housing voucher, and a landlord doesn't want to take housing vouchers. This might be news to folks, we have a lot of vouchers that are unused on the North Shore. I think Duluth had 85 that tenants have, but they can't find a place. So my point is, My understanding is you can't actually legally say you can't live here unless you have proof that you're working in the county. Now, I don't know if there were special parameters around that at the time, or that's one of the, I'd have to look into the details of that specific project. I'll just say that. Maybe it's changed since then. I think it was 2018. Any other questions?
Jason,
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna, Jason, I just missed where the Bjorkberg is. Where's the location of that again?
Yeah, 3rd Street in Grand Marais, and between really 7th and 8th Avenues West.
Okay,
On the north side of the street, there's actually, it's, I don't know if you know Wally Iverson. It's his property. Tony Iverson used to have North Shore Cable, I think. It's that property is like 2 acres that are mostly wooded at the moment.
I like to think of it as that street that doesn't go up near, if you're
Yeah.
going between the courthouse and like 8th, it's the street that doesn't go up. So,
Yep.
or if
'Cause
you
there's
were
a-
a kid that did any sledding, it's the one you didn't sled on, the one, the hill below is the one you went sledding on.
Any other questions from folks?
Jason, I just want to say it's really great to see the collaborations that are happening. And, we're gonna, and again, I think it's really important that we hear directly from you, specifically on what's the work that is being done on senior housing, because I don't think we always hear. Of course, there's such an intersection, right? We all impact each other. And but I think this kind of specific presentation hopefully will go far and wide as recording as well, to just really help answer some questions. It's exciting to see some of the work that is coming about in mud season. All things go well, I like that. So yeah, I mean, it's really, we're just really grateful you were able to take some time while you're at the Capitol advocating for Cook County. So thank you. And we're just grateful and really lucky to have you here in Cook County, and your energy and experience and knowledge and creative thinking. And we just really appreciate you so much here, and certainly your time today.
Thank you again so much for having me. This was my priority, actually, that the advocating or lobbying of the county came up after I already committed to this. And I said, oh, the Capitol people. Okay. So I had to make sure that I was here for this meeting. If I want to leave you with one thing, it's that I just want you to make sure you know that the HRA knows that their housing needs are far and wide across income spectrums and across age brackets. And we're trying to figure out creative ways to really get housing built. Like if we were to rely on specifically trying to get an assisted living facility or memory care, that could be a 5 or 10 year problem or project because of the staffing issues. I've already talked to a couple of those companies, and they've said, what's your healthcare environment look like? And so we're trying to provide alternatives for folks while we're working on maintaining what we have. So it's sort of I don't know, my brain's in about 10 places. But we're trying to build as quickly as we can what we can while we work on the longer term problems that take a lot longer. So thank you for the work you're doing. If anybody ever has any questions, please let me know. I just saw that Sarah Jane asked what's the best way to get updates. When there are 2 ways, Sarah Jane, you're welcome to come to our meeting anytime. They're riveting, I promise, HRA board meetings. And Commissioner Sullivan can attest. But those are all recorded and they're on the county board or the county's website. If you can't make it, obviously in person, that's one way to get updates. Another one is when we have more formal, actual, like the agreement is signed or, shovels in the ground, those things are announced on our website. I'm very cautious to not jump the gun, so to speak, and announce things ahead of time for both the developer's sake. And we want to make sure we're keeping trust with the community and not overpromising when something may or may not come to fruition.
Jason, I was also going to ask, along with that was a really great question, Sarah Jane. I'm glad you asked that. I was also going to say, just generally, where is and this may be your board meetings, but where is the best place for people to ensure voices get heard? I guess that if they have some concerns or about this process as it goes forward, what is the best way to do that for space?
Yeah, if you have feedback for the HRA, which we absolutely welcome, you can please feel free to attend a meeting if you can't come in person. Also feel free to send an email. There's actually on our website, there's a place that says contact us, and you can fill out a message. And if you have any feedback or you want to get in touch, that's a great way to do it. You can also write any of the HRA board commissioners, and they can bring emails and they'll read them if there's public comment. So whatever way is easiest for you to do it, we'll take it. And a lot of these things I understand there's a lot of nuance and finance and tech talk and complications, but if you have specific concerns or questions, we're happy to address them if we can.
Appreciate it. Thank you so
As we're
much.
hitting this 1 o'clock hour, I just want to say thank you for your time. I encourage you to hang out a minute longer if you have a question you really want to get answered, but otherwise wishing you a wonderful day. Thank you so much, Julie, and wonderful job, Jason.
Thank you
Yes,
again
thank
for having
you.
me. I'm going to go bug some of the people we hired over here at the Capitol to get some housing stuff done. So thank you
That
all
sounds
very
great. Thanks, Jason. And we'll
You're
see you
welcome.
all next week on Zoom for Elder Fraud. Find that on CCHE's website. Thank you.